Been at it already, had my tarot read. Things are looking up for me, that's what my tarot said. Been pumping out pheromones and wearing red. Young Jerry Lawler king, but they're not aware of it. $40 is show money, that's what they stole from me. Blow it all bowling, guess I roll funny. Go find me a snow bunny, ask if this cold world's making her nose runny. She melted. I wear a cape that is velvet, couldn't see it, she felt it. See it all like I'm Elvis.
Jay, he's doing it again! One of the many new tools in Davinci Resolve 18.5 that I have been having a ton of fun playing around with is something called USD, or Universal Scene Descriptor, which is a super easy way to work with 3D models. Without going into too much detail, USD files, unlike FBX, have the textures and animations baked in, so when you import them into Davinci Resolve, you don't have to add a bunch of extra nodes to add all that stuff like we used to. Now, this video isn't a deep dive into the USD system. I'm just going to show you how I used it to create the sketch you saw in the beginning of this video. If you want a deeper dive into USD, both Casey Ferris and Jake Whip have really good videos that will tell you everything you need to know. I'll have them linked below. But for now, let's jump into exactly how I made a monster have a dance party in my office. The first step was to gather all of my assets. First, I downloaded an animated 3D model from Mixamo. The model itself came as an FBX, so I threw it into Blender and exported it as a USB-C file, which, like I said, has all the textures and animations baked in. Next, I needed a 3D photo of my office. Now, I don't have a 3D camera, so I used an app called HDRI to create it with my iPhone. Then I needed a whole bunch of sound effects and a piece of music for the sketch, which I got from today's sponsor, Artlist, which is where I get all of my music, sound effects, and stock footage from for all of my projects. Artlist has a ton of high quality assets for video creators, and it's super easy to find what you're looking for thanks to their AI powered search features and layers of filters that allow you to really hone in your search. One of those filters that came in handy in this project is BPM. See, I wanted it to look like the monster in the sketch was actually dancing to the beat of the music, so I zeroed in on the BPM of the dance using a metronome app on my phone, then plugged in that BPM in Artlist, and was really quickly able to find a song that matched what I was looking for. Artlist has plans to fit all budgets, including one with an unlimited license that allows me to use their assets in any project, anywhere. For example, my podcast. Bet you didn't know I had one of those, did you? Artlist will be linked below if you want to check them out, and if you sign up using that link, you'll get 2 free months on top of your annual subscription. Thanks so much to Artlist for sponsoring this video and for continuing to support creators like me, and now that we have everything we need, let's jump into Davinci Resolve. The first thing that we need to do, as usual, is create a new Fusion clip. So in the edit page, we'll right-click on the clip that we're using as my background and select New Fusion Clip. Then we'll make sure that our playhead is at the beginning of that clip and head to the Fusion page. Now, since I filmed my background handheld, there is a little bit of motion to it, which means we'll need to track the footage. In most cases, when you're working with 3D, that means you'll use the camera tracker. But since this is only one angle and not a lot of motion, we don't need all of that. So we'll hit Shift Space on our keyboard, search for the tracker, and add it in between media in and media out. Then, in the inspector, we'll add 2 additional tracking points. From there, we'll choose the 3 spots in our footage that we want to track. Then, in the inspector, we'll click Track Forward. Once the tracking is done, we'll head to the Operations tab, change the operation to Match Move, and choose Background Only. This will keep our footage stabilized so we can more accurately place our 3D model in the scene. Then we'll add a transform node in between media in and the tracker to scale up our footage so it fills the frame. Now that our footage is prepared, it's time to start building out the 3D section of our node tree. Just like in the basic 3D system, we'll need a renderer, so we'll hit Shift Space on our keyboard and type in USD, find the uRenderer add it to the node graph, and connect it to the foreground input of our tracker. Then we'll add a uMerge node to the input of our uRenderer. Now it's time to bring in our 3D model, which we can do using a uLoader node. Once we add the uLoader node to the node graph, Davinci Resolve will open up our file explorer so we can choose the USDC file that we exported from Blender. We'll select that, click open, and connect the uLoader node to the uMerge node. Then we'll select the uLoader node and press 1 on our keyboard in order to view it in our left preview monitor. If we play that back, we'll see that the 3D model has been imported with all of the materials, textures, and animations baked in. Now, in order to complete our little 3D system, we need a camera and a light. So we'll add a uCamera node to our uMerge node. Then, to get our 3D model to show up in our final scene, we'll select the tracker node, and in the operations tab, we'll change the merge to foreground over background. Now our 3D model will move with the footage. Now it's time to add the light. The USD system has quite a few different types of lights that you can use, but for this project, we're going to use the uDome light, which essentially lets us use an HDRI to more accurately match our 3D model to our scene. Then we'll click on our uRenderer node and change the lighting to scene. This will make it so our 3D model is lit by the dome light. Now it's time to set our HDRI. To do this, we'll select our uDome light, then in the inspector under texture file, we'll select browse, choose the image we created with HDRI, and select open. Now the color of our 3D model will more closely match our scene. We still need to do a little color correcting on our 3D model, but first we should probably put it where it's going to be in our scene. To do that, we'll add a uTransform node in between our uLoader and uMerge nodes and tweak the scale, position, and rotation until we have a location that we like. From there, we can add a color corrector in between our uRenderer and tracker nodes, turn on pre-divide post-multiply, and adjust our 3D model until we like the way it looks. After that, we'll add some depth blur to help blend the model in a little bit more, do a quick color grade, and we get this.
It all bowling, guess I roll funny. Go find me a snow bunny, ask if this cold.
Now, the USD system in Davinci Resolve is still in beta, and it's not perfect. For example, there isn't a way to generate shadows yet. There are ways that you can create fake shadows, though. In fact, if you want to learn how to create fake shadows in Fusion, check out this video right here, and until next time, don't forget to go out and make stuff. Thanks for watching.